I understand Maine, is Maine here, the governor of Maine? Well, are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
Well, we are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good, I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor because I don't think you'll be in elected politics.
A deadline has arrived for Maine officials to reach a resolution with Trump's education department over transgender athlete inclusion in school sports.
This has been playing out for a while now. Last month, federal officials concluded Maine was in violation of anti-discrimination laws and threatened to pull federal funding from Maine schools.
That funding is critical for many of those schools. The state received $358 million in funds for K-12 schools from 2021 to 2022, about 10% of its budget. Jamie Ashley is joining us live in studio this morning. And Jamie, has there been any indication of how the state will respond today?
Well, Terry, with just under 12 hours left, the governor telling Maine's Total Coverage the state does not plan to respond to the federal government. Governor Mills explained the state and the federal government are already in court and that her goal is to pause the funding freeze that would impact the Department of Education.
You want to take away school nutrition funding, school meals, which is what the lawsuit is about. Freezing funding for the state to administer our school meals program. What sense does that make? It's what we call in the law arbitrary and capricious. Let's punish the kids? I don't get it.
The Title IX concerns here in Maine now expanding beyond just education and student athletics. Earlier this week, the Department of Corrections lost more than $1 million in funding for placing a transgender inmate in a women's facility.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about the Democrat Party, a party that is currently in free fall. And one of the reasons why they continue to be in free fall is because despite their 24/7 Trump derangement, Democrats can't seem to get their issues straight in their own party, right? They want to sit around and point the finger and to criticize Trump and what he's doing, when over the last 4 years, we've seen the governance of the Democrats, right? And the results of that, okay? Not good, okay? This is why Democrats got voted out of office, okay? And they have basically decided that instead of doing real self-evaluation, no, they're going to double and triple down on exactly what lost the Democrats the election, mainly the social issues in which Democrats are aligned with the far left. Like, for example, when it comes to biological boys competing against girls in sports, okay, this issue is a very easy issue, right? It should be, okay, on paper, because 80% of the American people do not believe that biological boys should be able to compete against girls in sports, okay? Very simple. However, the 20% that do mainly are the far left of the Democrat Party, right? The activists, the woke activists, who demand that the Democrats do not cave on this issue, right? That they have to stand up for what they call trans rights, right? This is what Democrats have to do. And there is no compromise, right? There is no in between, right? There is no coming to the middle, right? There's none of that, okay? You're either 100% on board or you're not, okay? And at this point, Democrats are showing us where they align. Like, for example, out in Maine, the governor of Maine, she has decided that she is going to defy the president's executive orders when it comes to banning biological boys from competing against biological girls in sports. She's decided that she's going to openly defy the president. She's going to also go against 80% of the American people, right? This is what she's decided she's going to do. And that is going to result in Maine further being defunded because President Trump is defunding states that do not comply. And Maine is finding out.
In the news this afternoon, the state of Maine has no plans to submit to an anti-trans demand from the Trump administration.
A letter from the state attorney general's office just this afternoon states that neither his office nor the Maine Department of Education will sign on to an agreement to ban transgender athletes from playing women's sports in high school. Various agencies in the Trump administration have been withholding funds to the state over its inclusive policies. In a letter to the Office of Civil Rights, Maine Assistant Attorney General Sarah Forster writes that Maine and the feds are, quote, at an impasse, adding nothing in Title IX or its implementing regulations prohibits schools from allowing transgender girls and women to participate on girls and women's sports teams. Your letters to date do not cite a single case that so holds. To the contrary, various federal courts have held that Title IX and or the Equal Protection Clause require schools to allow such participation, end quote. She then cites 4 cases that uphold that standard. That matter will now likely be referred to the U.S. Department of Justice.
Yeah, we're going to see Maine in court, right? Just like President Trump said, we are going to see you in court, okay? I just got a feeling that with the Supreme Court, okay, I mean, not counting Amy Coney Barrett, I have no faith in her whatsoever. If the Supreme Court can't get this one right, if the Supreme Court cannot get this one right, throw away the whole court, right? I just want to say that up front, right? If it gets to the Supreme Court, right? But I'm just saying, this should be an easy W, right? This should be an easy W. So with that being said, the trans activists, okay, they're now coming out and telling the Democrats that you better not fold, right? You better start fighting back, and you have to win on trans issues because science is on their side, right? This is what the trans activists are saying. The science is on their side, and Democrats better not back down to Republicans, or else they're going to lose, right? They're not going to vote for Democrats. They're going to abandon Democrats if they do not do what the trans activists want, right? So this is why I tell you guys, Democrats are stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? Because they got in bed with, the far left, and now Democrats have to decide, right? Are you with the far left, or are you with the rest of the country, right? Who you with? Okay, Democrats got to make a choice. I think they've already made their choice, but again, the activists are speaking out and telling Democrats to hold the line, right? Hold the line against Trump.
Let's start with what's happening in Maine. That feud between the state and the Trump administration centers around a Trump executive order that was banning transgender athletes from women's sports. But you know what, Charlotte? I want to note this because it goes even further. Trump wants Maine to agree that his policies outweigh Maine's Human Rights Act, which provides protection for transgender people in all areas, not just in sports. And withholding these federal funds will keep kids in Maine from being fed in schools and child care centers and will hurt disabled adults in congregate settings. And that's according to the lawsuit that was brought by Maine's Attorney General this week. Why isn't there more being done to amplify how incredibly unjust are these attacks?
Because it's unpopular. That's why. It's not a winning issue. That's why more is not being done, right? Democrats know that they can't win on this. This is why they're now trying to avoid it. This is why they don't want to talk about it. Every time it comes up, they say, nah, we shouldn't talk about it, right? Let's not talk about it. Let's move on to something else. It's not important. That's why, right? That's why.
Oh, Ms. Phang, thank you so much for having me on. I am such a huge fan, and I think Congressman Garcia was right. This is one of the best hours of television every week, so thank you for all you do. It's funny. Republicans have spent the last several decades arguing that federal government overreach is something we should all be concerned about, that states should do wall-to-wall governing. And here you have the federal government under Trump telling states what they should do and threatening to withhold funding. I got to tell you, when I look for leadership right now, I'm looking at our Democratic governors, folks like Andy Beshear, Mr. Pritzker in Illinois, and of course, Ms. Mills in Maine. These are the folks who are pushing back hard and understanding the stakes.
Yeah, they're pushing back hard against their own people. Do you really think that Andy Beshear, the Democrat governor of Kentucky, do you really think Kentucky is okay with biological boys competing in girls' sports? You really think Kentucky is okay with that? I'm just going to take a good guess and say that the people of Kentucky do not support that, right? They don't support that, even though they did vote a Democrat into office. right? That doesn't mean that they support the most extreme parts of the Democrat agenda. But see, that's what Democrats do. They get voted into office, right? And then they come out and say, hey, I'm an extremist, right? Especially in these swing states, okay? This is why the Democrat governors of these swing states, they're far leftists, right? Because they run as moderates, but then they govern as far leftists. That's what they do, okay? So with that being said, this individual also tried to use the same old argument that the left uses when they try to call out conservatives for quote unquote big government, right? This person is making an argument for states' rights, right? This person is saying that, hey, this should be a state's issue. The problem is that this person doesn't believe that this should be a state's issue, okay? Because I guarantee you this person is against every single state that has already decided that they're going to ban biological boys from competing against biological girls in sports. I guarantee you this individual does not support that. I guarantee you this individual supports federal legislation that would actually block those states from being able to do that, right? I guarantee you. So again, this is why it's so funny to me when these liberals try to use this whole like reverse, like, oh, conservatives are now pushing big government thing, which by the way, this is a human rights issue, right? And I think in the cases of human rights, right, a human rights issue, yeah, I think it's appropriate for the federal government to step in and say, hey, we need to do what's right. In the same way that the federal government stepped in when you talk about civil rights, or the same way that the government stepped in for slavery, right? I think people all agree that, hey, you know, that was overall net positive. I'm not saying everything, okay, was positive, but overall net positive, okay, for society when the federal government decided to step in and say, hey, you know what, we probably shouldn't, you know, be living like this, right? We shouldn't be living like this, okay? But today, okay, you have women who believe that this is a women's rights issue, right? So for them, they see this as their civil rights. It's like, hey, I want the right to be able to compete amongst other women, people of the same sex in sports fairly, right? I want to have access to my own spaces, okay? They see this issue as a human rights issue, the same way that this individual sees this as a human rights issue. It's just that we disagree, right? We just disagree on whose rights are being violated. So that in and of itself warrants the quote unquote big government approach to this issue from conservatives, right? See, these people think that conservatives are libertarians. Conservatives are not libertarians, okay? Conservatives don't want to have to use the government, but conservatives will use the government to enforce certain social agendas, right? That is kind of what being a conservative is about, because culture matters. Okay. Now, when it comes to libertarians, they're not concerned about culture as much as they're concerned about maximizing what they define as freedom, right? And because of that, that is why they take a more hands-off approach when it comes to the whole small government thing, especially when you talk about social issues, right? You tend to find those libertarians who are okay with these issues because they feel like, okay, I might be against it, but it's not the state's job to ban it or to intervene. It's a societal issue, right? And that's kind of the way they look at it, okay? And that's the difference, okay? A lot of people think that conservatives and libertarians are the same. They're not. Conservatives would like small government in the ideal society with the ideal culture, right? Not the current society and culture that we have right now. Because again, in the ideal society, specifically on this issue, everybody would agree that, hey, this is an issue of fairness, that it is not fair for biological boys to compete against biological girls in sports. Nobody is trying to ban trans people from participating in sports, but they have to compete amongst themselves, which I'm totally fine with, right? That's the real compromise, okay? But they don't want to compromise, okay? That's the frustrating part about this. They can compete amongst themselves, or they can compete based off their biological sex. But regardless, again, it's just about fairness. It's not about being pro-trans or anti-trans. It's not about hate and bigotry. It's not about any of that. It's simply about fairness. And everybody will understand that. Therefore, this wouldn't even be an issue because society would police itself. You wouldn't even need the state to come in and to say, hey, we got to ban it, because, again, society has already taken care of the issue, right? But because we don't live in that society, right? We live in a different society. You need the state to come in and say, okay, well, we have to enforce this because clearly society is not doing so, right? And again, that's what people got to understand about the conservative ideology, right? In the ideal world, yes, we have small government because society polices itself, okay? Through morality, religion, etc. Okay, but because we don't live in that society, that necessitates the need for the government to step in. okay, and to enforce a certain social order, okay? And in this case, again, because this is an 80-20 issue, it's not like President Trump is going against the will of the people, right? You could argue he's just carrying out the will of the people. Again, it's an 80-20 issue, right? Again, you're talking about, what, 4 out of 5 people agree with Trump, agree with Republicans on this issue?
Right now, I'm not seeing a lot of fight from Democratic leadership in Congress, and that is a huge mistake, and I'll tell you why. We're going to get to next year, and I think Democratic leadership is hoping that trans issues will go away, that they'll be able to focus on broad economic issues and really fight the election on those terms. The problem with this thinking is that we have an open goal. No one's defending it. Why wouldn't Republicans keep kicking at that goal? Why wouldn't they keep filling that information void and having voters hear from just one side on trans issues? This is going to come up in the midterms. And if we don't fight back, if we don't contextualize it for the American people, we are going to suffer electorally. I promise you that.
Yeah, so I hope Democrats listen to this person, right? Please, Democrats, if you're listening, listen to Charlotte Clymer, right? Charlotte Clymer has exactly what you need to revive your party, right? This is what you should do. Instead of trying to ignore the issue, right, you got to come out here and you have to actively defend the far left, okay, on this issue, okay? You have to argue against 80% of the American people. Yes, that's exactly what you should do. See, again, this is why I say Democrats are stuck between a rock and a hard place, because individuals like this, they're not just going to let the Democrats sweep this under the rug. They're not going to let the Democrats back away from the issue, because President Trump is actively putting out executive orders. There's legislation being passed in Congress. Democrats have to play defense. If they don't play defense, then basically, in the eyes of the activists, Democrats are just as guilty, right? They're participating because they're not actively trying to stop it. So it's really damned if you do, damned if you don't for Democrats at this point, okay? And if Democrats if they ever did what they actually really should do, which is to align with President Trump and the Republicans on this issue, right? If they ever did that, which they would never do, then the activists might just turn on the Democrats altogether, right? The activists, who knows what they might do, okay? We've seen how these activists, they get really upset when they feel like they're being betrayed by the Democrats, right? And we've seen the activists turn on Democrats, okay, for not being woke enough. So I'm just saying, Democrats, they have no answer here, right? They have absolutely no answer. And the activist pressure on them to, again, double and triple down on what lost them the election, yeah, that's going to be hard for Democrats to overcome.
Charlotte, you and I have talked about this offline. I mean, the Republicans love to fearmonger. That's their currency. It galvanizes people to vote based on fear, not on facts. I always like to say, don't vote on feelings, vote on facts. Ground our viewers right now on why making trans people the boogeyman is just something that the Republicans want to do right now. And to your point, they're going to move on from that, and they're going to make another group targeted, and the next round of fear-mongering continues.
Well, nobody is making trans people the boogeyman. See, Democrats do this thing where they will push some woke policy like DEI, right, aka discrimination against whites. And when people say, hey, I don't agree with discrimination against whites, they'll say, well, why are you attacking blacks? Right? That's what they do, right? That's what they do every single time, okay? And it's like, okay, we don't agree with biological boys competing against biological girls in sports, but that's not attacking trans people. That's just saying we just don't agree with biological boys competing against biological girls in sports. That's not an attack on trans people. But that's how they frame it, because they don't have good arguments, right? They don't have good arguments.
That gets right to the heart of it. So there are two things. First of all, according to polling, most Americans believe they don't personally know a trans person, which makes it a lot easier to be bystanders when the trans community is attacked. The second thing, of course, is that only one party is really talking about trans issues. It's the Republican Party. They've made trans issues one of their central topics in campaigning and the national discourse, what have you. The more the Democrats ignore this, the more it's going to come back to haunt us in future elections. Republicans are not going to let up on this. They're not going to leave it alone. They're not going to stop this, and we're going to suffer. And here's what I find ironic about all this. it's very easy to fight back on trans issues. The science is on our side. Every credible medical organization has come out and endorsed gender affirming care and said that the trans military ban is ridiculous and unnecessary. They've said that trans women should be housed in women's prisons. I mean, these are all policies that make sense if you're willing to fight back. But the more we don't fight back, the more Republicans are going to engage in bad faith and run up a score on Democrats. And I think we all deserve better.
Yeah, so that is the Democrat Party, right? The activists are telling the Democrat Party, hey, you got to double and triple down on defending us, right? You got to double and triple down because everything is on their side, right? They say that the science is on their side, public support is on their side, like everything is on their side, right? And again, who knows why the Democrats are trying not to talk about this issue if everything is on their side. But, you know, apparently Democrats are missing something, right? They're missing something, okay? Regardless, in my opinion, I think that they're going to have to choose, right? I think that there are no good choices for the Democrats. They're stuck between a rock and a hard place. It's just going to be hilarious to see them crumble under the weight of their own wokeness, right? Because this is self-inflicted on the Democrats, okay? So we're going to see. The economy is going to get better. That's the crazy thing. The economy is going to get better. And Democrats can't rely on, oh, we just have to stick to the economic issues because when the economy gets better, you're not going to have that argument, right? You're not going to have it. That's what Democrats don't understand, okay? So we'll see. We'll see. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.